Good afternoon. Vijayalakshmi, it's such an honor and a pleasure to have you here. You know, my one everlasting image is of you and your mother performing in Edinburgh. And even as you glided in your white and gold Mohiniyattam attire, I think you transfixed the entire theatre at the Edinburgh International Festival, 1,600 people, and left that lasting impression. So tell us a little bit about Mohiniyattam. It's not a dance form that perhaps have anybody engaged with Mohiniyattam, which is one of the classical dance forms from India. So I don't think anybody has. So tell us a little bit about the dance form.
Namaste, everyone. I welcome you all to the conversation today on dance and healing. First off, I'd like to really thank Sanjoy for inviting me to be part of this absolutely wonderful, beautiful, much needed event like this. And I am very happy to be here today to share some of the most prominent aspects of this dance form called Mohunyatam, which is a South Indian classical dance form of Kerala. The dance form literally translates into dance of the divine enchantress. And there are several episodes in Hindu mythology which describe Vishnu, one of the trinities of the Indian pantheon, transforming himself into a beautiful woman. And it was done for the divine enchantress, Vishnu took this form of divine enchantress to essentially lure demons to their own annihilation. But the deeper significance of this transformation into a beautiful woman was, because this is a very spiritual forum, I would say that the deeper purpose was to lure a person from lust to higher consciousness. So we see that at the very outset, the dance form is very spiritual, and because it evolved in the temples of South India, the dancer danced as an offering to divinity, as a way of communion. So the dance form is deeply rooted in the sacred feminine. And because it is rooted in the sacred feminine, that naturally has a very big impact on the spirit and technique of the dance form. So the spirit is predominantly that of Shringara, which translates into beauty or love. Femininity is all about beauty and love. I'm sure all the women here would agree with that. But so beyond that, given that the spirit is that of femininity predominantly, the movements, therefore, the characteristic movements of this dance form are very gentle, graceful, seamless, with no abrupt punctuations. And the movements just flow like a river. So today, what I would really like to share with you is that since I've been invited to speak on dance and healing, how does Mohiniyattam, what is so distinct about the dance form, and what makes it so perfect, and what a perfect match for a woman to connect with her own femininity. So I'm going to say that I've been practicing this dance form now for a couple of decades and teaching this dance form. And I'd like to say that a lot of women have come to me to learn, and they have found something very, very enriching about Mohiniyattam as a dance form, and it has made a very, very significant impact on their lives. in terms of it has impacted them mentally, emotionally, physically, psychologically, and spiritually. For all of which I am deeply grateful that I've had the opportunity to teach all these women and for them to experience Mohiniyattam in this manner.
Vijayalakshmi, I would love you to just maybe show a few steps from the form, because then nobody here quite knows what it stands for. But before that, your guru was your mother, one of the most incredible exponents of the Mohiniyattam dance form. And Mohiniyattam itself in between had sort of lapsed because it had disappeared into the consciousness. Your mother, Bharati Shivaji, in many ways resurrected this form. And she herself came from a different tradition initially. Her guru was a Bharatanatyam teacher. Tell us a little bit about the Guru Shishya tradition that Indian dance has, and the way that the philosophy of the dance gets then translated and transformed and carried on through the Guru Shishya tradition. And why is it so important? I remember you saying to me that you and Vani, from the age of 5, imbibed the instructions and the form of Mohiniyattam from your mother. And it's really that decade of practice, or decades of practice, that you see in the lyrical beauty when you perform. And for those of you who don't know, she has a 26-year-old daughter, or 28-year-old daughter, just for the record, just in case anybody thought that she was, 23.
I had child marriage. No, I'm joking. I didn't. That's a wonderful question Sanjoy has asked me about. I feel very blessed to really belong to a family of artists, family of women artists, where my grandmother is a classical singer. She just celebrated her 98th birthday 3 days ago. And my mother, who was my guru, and who's, as he said, singularly responsible for reviving this dying dance form, which it was more than 4 decades ago, and putting it on the international map. She's been singularly responsible for that. I've been tremendously blessed to belong to a family of such phenomenal women. All of us steeped to...
Notice the men haven't been spoken about here. Done your job, your
Yeah, for some reason the men have not featured much in our family. But not by design, it just happened that way. I grew up, where dance and music was just a way of life. It was like brushing my teeth. It's like, children learn how to brush their teeth and learn their alphabet. So it was always how to sing, dance, theatre, painting, music, visual arts. Because all the women in my family are literally involved with all of these things. So very early on, this kind of passion that I saw, my guru's passion for the dance form, it of course made a very deep impact on me. And then when I started becoming a teenager, I think that's when I started realizing that Mohiniyattam is a dance form. I had done another Indian dance form, but I felt when I moved my body in Mohunyatam, I felt different. I was a little young at that time to understand why did I feel so different. I found the movements very meditative, very peaceful, very tranquil. And now when I really look back at my journey, now I'm able to piece everything together, because the dance form is a very meditative dance form. And it's a very powerful dance form in terms of the movements are very therapeutic, very healing, and very empowering for women. At that time, I couldn't understand why I was so drawn to it, but today I can.
Will you just demonstrate a few steps? Because I think everybody wants to see this lyrical dance form that you're talking about. Just a few steps. I'm sorry we're going to have to do it without the music because we hadn't prepared for that. But Thank you. The other aspect to the dance is actually the costume, which is very different again from the other Indian classical dance traditions that you may have seen, Bharatnatyam, Odissi, or Kathak. Tell us about the symbolism of the white and the gold.
The white and gold colored costume is worn because white is a symbol of, in Hindu spiritual traditions, it's a symbol of purity, femininity, and apart from the costume, a very significant aspect of the dance form, you would have seen how I used my hands. And for many of you, I know that many of you practice yoga here, so you would be familiar with usage of hand gestures known as mudras. These mudras means hand gestures. So mudras like this play a very significant role in Indian dance, especially a dance form like this. Why? Because these mudras, when practiced over a period of time, they are meant to create change in the body and mind. So for example, if I were to show, let's say that I am a very powerful woman. Oh. That was not powerful, that was just beautiful. Just being a woman, not even beautiful. So what happens is, over a period of time when we use these mudras, they create that change in our mind and body. And more than that, what happens is they release stuck emotions in the body. Especially as a woman, I can say, because I work with a lot of organizations that are involved with women's empowerment, women who go through abuse, women who go through a lot of trauma, and just everyday women. I think as women, I'm sure you all know that as women, we tend to suppress our feelings and emotions more than anybody else, because it's always our parents, our children, our husbands, neighbor, our dog, neighbor's dog. We are possibly not even on that list, which is true. So as women, what we do is we suppress our feelings and emotions. And if we really want, regardless of gender, if you're really looking for a healthy body, then the most important thing is to look at our feelings and emotions. And which is why the mind-body connection is so significant to a dance form, especially like Mohunyatam. Because unless we acknowledge and process these feelings and emotions, we cannot hope to have a physically healthy body that really enables us to do what we really want. So what these mudras do is they release these emotions that have been suppressed in us as women, and therefore it's the slow movements of the dance form. The movements are, and I also have worked with a few healers where they have felt very strongly that the movements of Mohiniyattam are very much reminiscent of Tai Chi and Qigong, the ancient Chinese martial art forms. If you would have seen, the movements are very slow, and there is a reason why they are slow. In this very fast-paced world where everything is so fast, I always tell my students, you have all the time. The whole idea is to do it slowly. And what it does is that these slow movements also create a lot of peace and calmness. So the movements are very meditative. And what happens is when the dancer or the practitioner experiences this very healing and therapeutic aspect, the dancer also feels empowered. Because once we release all this, baggage of emotions and feelings, then we are able to feel lighter. A woman is able to connect with her own femininity and connect with the power of her own femininity. And what also happens is when we experience the healing and the therapeutic effects of the dance form, it also evokes a great joy within us. The joy, simply the joy of being a woman. Just the joy of being a woman. And I always say this, that as women, I don't think we need to do anything to look beautiful, but just virtue of being women. We are born beautiful. We are meant to be beautiful.
So I have long hair. I mean, come on. What is this?
So,
discrimination.
I am terribly biased. Just got to accept it. And so it gives a woman a wonderful opportunity to really delve into, who am I? What am I meant to be? What am I meant to do? As an individual, as a person, as a woman, and then beyond just simply her various roles in life of a daughter, wife, friend, lover, whatever that it may be. So that's how powerful I see the dance form as.
But one of the things, there's more and more research coming out that, especially with people with dementia or Alzheimer's, dance has been seen to be a great enabler for people with dementia because it allows the synapse to work in a way to ensure mobility, both in Alzheimer's patients as well as in Parkinson's and in dementia. Tell us a little bit about how dance, you talked about the mudras in the way that the mudras heal or self-heal. But talk to us about dance and expression, and why is dance and movement so important? Yesterday we heard from Dr. Sharad Paul that there's a particular kind of sea creature that finds its favorite rock, sits on the rock, and then eats its brain. It's like the couch potato. You just sit in front of a television and then eat up your brain. So why is movement so important and the expression of dance?
That's a wonderful question. So movement, I think some of it I touched upon a little while ago. Why are the movements of this particular dance form so powerful? Because, like I said, when I worked with some healers, they felt that the movements were very energetically relevant, energetically restorative. So it's not just simply, for example, what is the difference between, just 2-3 days ago I was thinking, what is the difference between, let's say, going to a gym and doing a dance form like this? With no offense to people who go to the gym, I have never been to a gym in my life, but I'm sure it is a great experience. But for example, so what is the experience of dancing and practicing a dance form like this? It might not even be to dance or practice it. It might just be to even watch it, to just imbibe it. What is it that really sets it, that makes it so powerful? Like I said, because of the very slow movements, the very, very, which are so energetically restorative, technically speaking as well. It is that for that very reason that it has a very profound impact on a woman's well-being in every aspect, her mental, emotional, psychological, physical, and spiritual. And the other point that Sanjoy talked about is, why is self-expression so important? I think that is a very significant question, again, especially as women, because we tend to suppress our feelings and emotions. It is very, very critical that we firstly acknowledge our emotions and feelings to our own self before we even acknowledge it to our near and dear ones and friends. It's very important to acknowledge it to deal with it, to process it. And a dance form like Mohiniyattam is not only rich in terms of body movement and hand gestures, mudras, but what again sets this apart from perhaps all other Indian dance forms is its very, very rich dramatic element. For example, let's say I want to show a beautiful woman, and for woman, we in Mohunyatam in this dance form, I do this. This is just to show a woman, not even beautiful. But if I want to say beautiful, then it is a very elaborate usage of facial expression. Very, very elaborate. Why? Because this use of facial expression again enables a woman to really connect with her own feelings and emotions. And it could be her feelings of sadness, it could be shame, it could be joy, it could be trauma, it could be whatever the feeling might be. So these very elaborate, dramatic facial expressions further complements these very rich body movements. So she's able to experience self-expression. And it's a wonderful way. I already see somebody in the audience. That was very good what you did now. Very lovely.
We're going to get you to lead them in a bit, but I think one of the other secrets of this great, beautiful facial expressions is keeping her skin young. I mean, just look at her. Vijayalakshmi, let me come back to your own personal journey, and we've been given a sort of time out in a little bit. I'll open it up to the audience. You yourself weren't just satisfied to keep Mohiniyattam in the form that you had learned. And one of the most beautiful productions that we've toured with you has been Swan Lake, where you did Swan Lake in the Mohiniyattam tradition. And let me tell you, it was totally, when we first did this in South Africa, I think, if I'm not mistaken, I mean, it just, it brought the house down because it was such a lyrical form. And the costume was so beautiful. And the music just lend itself to such a beautiful thing. So what was that in this thing that you wanted to break out of what was a classical tradition and you wanted to explore this contemporary form?
That's a fabulous question, Sanjoy. He's really known about my journey over the many decades, but I think I've always believed that tradition does not imply stagnation. Just because this dance form evolved in the temples of South India, which is wonderful, therefore it's spiritual, but finally it really boils down to what does this dance form mean to me? What does any tradition mean to us? Not just a dance form. It could be anything. It could be marriage. What does it mean to have a child? Yes, everybody has. Do I need to have a child too? Am I really meant to be a mother? So I think really asking those questions that, why we do what we do. So it really came out of that. And I always found it very difficult to be boxed in a particular category. I always found it very stifling, and which is why I did an entire production inspired from Tchaikovsky, because I love Western classical music, although I come from a family of very hardcore traditional classical music. But I love Western classical. I did a whole production. My guru was pretty horrified. She said, "Are you crazy? No Indian music at all?" I said, "No, only Tchaikovsky, and he's going to save me and protect me." And he did. And he did. Because performed it at the Bolshoi Theatre, what a blessing. And at the St. Petersburg Conservatoire, where Tchaikovsky himself studied music. So I think there's got to be real passion and there's got to be truth in what we do. And it's very important to ask ourselves why we do what we do.
You've now moved to LA in these last few years, and during COVID, which were obviously very difficult for practitioners, you used your dance in many ways to heal. Tell us a little bit about your present journey in LA and the work that you've been doing.
It's been just a lovely experience, a journey for me being in LA. I've set up a Mohunyatam Institute, an extension of what I have set up in Delhi in India with my mother over 35, 40 years. My organization is a non-profit, and we work with a lot of organizations, collaborate with organizations that are involved with women's issues, women's empowerment. I also work with a lot of universities. I was awarded a regent lectureship by UCLA 2 years ago. That was a great honor, wonderful honor for Mohiniyattam. I work with a lot of students, universities, about the academic aspect of the dance form. And so it really depends on who my audience is, whether they're students or it's uninitiated audience. I work with artists, some artists from Hollywood I've had the wonderful opportunity to work with, which has been a lot of fun, very enriching. So it's just very excited about my journey in LA.
You know, one of the things that we're seeing today is that dance, like music, has been seen as instant coffee. You go to the machine, you pour it out, and you drink it. So you do 2 hours of dance a week, and after about 6 months, you're happy to go and debut or do your arangetram, as opposed to the tradition where 7 to 14 years you practice not just the form but understand the philosophy, because dance and the classical forms are about a philosophy. Do you have a comment on this? And is it okay to have this sort of instant noodle kind of thing?
Gratification. No, I think it's a great question, absolutely great question. In fact, I was almost coming to that, and I'm so glad you asked me this because it reminds me that I think, yes, we do live in a world where we want to see instant results for everything, but Mohiniyattam to me is more a way of life, a state of mind. It's like when you practice yoga, which many of you here in the audience do, it's not just the 1 hour of yoga that you do or whatever duration of time of yoga that you do. Ideally, it really must permeate our entire day, our entire life. It is not a one-off thing. That's not the way, that's not why yoga was created. So I see this dance form also as a very similar experience because it has a lot in common with yoga, where it is a state of mind. When people ask me, how many hours do you practice every day? Do you do 10 hours, 15 hours? I don't do, there have been times when I've done 10 hours and 15 hours, sure there have. But every day is not possible. But what is it that keeps me connected with the dance form in my every waking, sleeping, every breath? It is because it kindles that certain state of mind. And if we are open to it, then we can experience that the whole day, the whole time. And it can permeate every aspect of our life, not just when I'm on the stage or just when I'm teaching somebody.
Do you want to end by maybe leading us a little bit in a simple mudra or a simple step which can be used in a...
Okay.
Yeah, I mean you can use a place where there's no carpet, or you can come down.
So very simple movement. So the namaste as we are telling that is fantastic. So ideally we would remove the shoes if possible. It's not a very tedious thing, not a difficult thing. Then this is one of the simplest but to me one of the most profound movements of Mohunyatam. So keeping the feet together, and so all we're going to do is, remember I talked about the slow movements of Mohunyatam and how we gently sway our bodies. So just watch me first and then try with me. So I'm just going to even if you don't do the latter half of the step, just forget the hands for a moment. Forget the hands. Let's keep it simple. They can. I have a soft voice, but they can hear me. So, just sway. See what happens, how you feel with your body when you can do it, if you like. Isn't that what is said? So swaying from side to side. So if you just forget the hand for a moment. So what happens if you just sway like this? Feel your torso, which is the middle of the body, just swaying side to side. And the whole trick is keeping the body as relaxed as possible. Not moving the shoulders. Shoulders completely relaxed. It's a dance form that completely is rooted in being natural. You don't want to do any movement that is unnatural. So once you experience this, then you can bring your hand to your front of your chest, right? Keeping the body loose, not keeping it so straight, keeping it, let it go, letting go. The dance form is all about letting go. That's why I love it so much. Not holding on tight, letting go. And see if you notice, I'm also using my eyes. Side to side. So it also makes our eye muscles very strong. You see how many pluses? Then you won't have to wear spectacles very soon in life. You develop strong eye muscles, and then if you can try and conclude with this. So on the back leg is, you sit on the back leg, the front leg is stretched on its toes, and you look like this. I always say we have the humble look, correct? In Mohunyatam, we never look like this. Because we are a humble lot. So, yes, that was right.
Last question. You know, one of the interesting things that we are seeing more and more today, especially in the United States, you're seeing some great dance companies of the Indian classical tradition, whether it's in Chicago or in Washington or in San Francisco. Is there a sense of wanting to preserve something as a migrant that has come out? Is there a sense that there are people wanting to learn new forms? How do you see this? Especially in LA and Hollywood, where you are based right now.
That is again a great question. Well, there are many dimensions to this, but I'll be as brief as possible. For the Indian diaspora, of course, it is a very burning issue of being connected to their roots, their tradition, and somehow everybody must learn some other Indian dance form. Every parent wants their daughter to learn, have her debut performance, whichever dance form. It's usually Bharatanatyam, and all of that happens. It's like a very fierce, tenaciously hanging on to your roots, which I understand, and I understand. But there is the other dimension with people like me, who comes from a very hardcore traditional artistic family, but I have a very different mindset. My mindset is where I perceive the dance form as a very, as something that is universally, that resonates with women across all cultures and races and cultural backgrounds. And I interpret the dance form in a very different way, which is why I work with a lot of non-Indian artists, which I've been doing my whole life. Even when I lived in India, I was always very different and out of the box. And I don't see it as a just a fossilized Indian tradition that evolved in the temples, because I don't relate to it like that. It's a very vibrant, living, current tradition that is universal.
Thank you so much, Vijayalakshmi. We hope to introduce dance next year into the festival, and if we do, you all will look forward to seeing Vijayalakshmi and the Mohiniyattam dance form being performed here. So thank you so much for coming out all the way from LA. Thank you for your tradition. Thank you to your guru. And thank you all for being part of the conversation. Suraj, back to you.
Thank you, Sanjoy. Thank you very much for being a wonderful audience. Thank you very much.